have an attractive logo. It's not to go and just simply make the community prettier. It is to grow the economy. And that is an issue that every single recommendation that I make today is going to be tied into. You are a community that is going through an extremely important growth phase as a place. One of the things that I heard in input meeting after input meeting is we are an aging community. We are getting older and older. Yet Gene shared relatively new data with me yesterday morning saying that the median age in Georgetown is 29.2 years. That is unbelievably young. You know why? Because there are portions of the community that trend extremely young. And you got to remember how median works. Remember, a median is different from an average. It means that half the population is younger than 29.2 and half the population is older. You also have an exploding cultural diversity in this community. And if that cultural diversity is not, you don't wrap your arms around it, if you don't figure out how to take that diversity and roll it into your sense of place, then it will be a cultural divide. And that divide will grow deeper, and the gap will grow larger and larger. And it will actually undermine your economy. I have seen this done over and over again. I'm very excited about the opportunities that Georgetown has. I'm not concerned, I'm excited because I think that you can go through and you can take the base that you have and you can really grow it into something you're excited about. I went through and I spoke with a lot of these business owners all throughout the community. I was extremely impressed with the caliber of business owners. Didn't matter what kind of business it was. I think we need to do a better job of really fostering that communication across the board and thinking about Georgetown as an economy. I think that's the big stuff, the big kind of overarching stuff. The stuff that you would imagine that we heard. People love the courthouse building, love the circle. They love the opportunity that sports at the beach offers. They love the proximity that Georgetown affords to other places here in Sussex County. One of the interesting things that was shared that I feel like I have felt here in Sussex is actually 3 different places. You got east of 1, you got the area between the highways, and then you've got west. And Georgetown really serves as that meeting place, that logical gathering place, that center point. One of the other things that was shared with me that seems to make sense is another thing that you see happen in Sussex County is the clustering of communities where Laurel and Seaford kind of act as a micro-economy, and Lewis and Rehoboth act as a collective economy, and Millsboro and Georgetown act as a connected economy. So those, I think, were all very, very interesting observations. All right, so from there, we're going to move into recommendations. And what I try to do is I try to take a scientific approach to something that's very subjective. So the first thing that I'm going to show you is the color palette. I believe that color is extremely important in being able to connect the dots. And what I like to do is when I go through and make color recommendations, I like to bring those colors out from the actual context of the place. So what I did was I took a series of photos around the community while I was here, and I sampled 4 different colors. Now, the colors on the screen are going to be a little bit different than what they are on the computer, but I don't think there's anything about this palette that doesn't really make sense. We've got a color that was obviously derived from the brick that we see all around the circle. We see blues and greens that are prevalent in the community over and over again. And then, although it might look black, it's not black at all. It's actually a very, very warm, dark brown. And brown's probably not the best word. It does kind of tend towards gray, but it's actually a very warm color. Again, that was sampled in several different places. I pulled it out of the clock over next to the Masonic Lodge, pulled it out of some of the metalwork that was seen on the courthouse, and then some of the light pole and kind of physical elements that are there throughout the community. So with that, you've got a 4-color basic color palette that's derived from your community. The nice thing about this is when the colors are derived from your place, when you connect them with images of your place, everything complements one another. So you'll see that as we move into the implementation phase, how the colors of this system really make the photos of your home pop. So then the second thing that I always look at is typefaces. And I went through, I looked, it's kind of weird whenever I brand a community that I have worked in another community in a different state with the same name, because so much of the essence of the place is tied into your name, and nobody's ever let me change their name before, so I always have to kind of deal with what I'm dealt with. This is the 3rd Georgetown that I've worked in, and strangely enough, all 3 Georgetowns have been truly old and truly historic communities. So believe it or not, I already knew a little bit about the way that your name worked. So the thing that I did was I wanted to select a typeface that would be extremely attractive, easy to read, but also very much would cross the line for someone that wanted to make sure that it said historic, it read as historic. But for someone that also wanted to say progressive, energy, momentum, it read that way as well. So I picked a brand new script typeface. It was actually created 2 weeks ago by a guy out of Minnesota. So chances are you are one of the first places that has ever had this typeface used for them, which is kind of cool. And then the secondary is a very, very traditional, what we call serif typeface. Now, this primary typeface, I will tell you, I typically trend away from using script. People like to pick script because it's pretty, and pretty doesn't always mean effective. But this actually reads very, very well, and one of the great things about it is the G in both uppercase and lowercase are extremely attractive, which means the nature of who you are is kind of built into that typeface. So you'll see how that kind of comes together. And then the next thing that I wanted to do was I wanted to give you some art that you could use over and over again. If you go through and you look at all of the logos that have ever existed here in the community, anybody want to take a stab as to one of the most consistent elements in any logo?
Horse and carriage.
A horse and carriage, or the circle and courthouse. So I wanted to go in and I wanted to create an image of the courthouse that was perfectly to scale, that was absolutely your place. And one of the things that's interesting about art like this is sometimes you can have something that is truly yours, but it reads as clip art. And we'll look at the current city, the town seal right now, and we'll be able to see a little bit of what we're talking about, where because of how that image is presented, even though it is the courthouse, it reads a little more like a generic picture. So I went and I drew this from scratch, and this is what we call vector art, which means we can blow this up as big as we want to, and it doesn't ever lose quality. So you have kind of a baseline of good, solid artwork from the beginning. So we've looked at colors, we've looked at typeface, we've looked at some of the art pieces, and then we want to talk a little bit about message. And the way we do that is with something we call a brand statement. So I took a stab at this, and I'm going to read it out for you. This is a good place where there might be spelling errors, and if you're an English teacher or former English teacher, then you got to give me a little bit of a break here. But I'll do my best to read this for you. We are Georgetown, Delaware. For over 200 years, people have been drawn here to the heart of Sussex County, from farmers to lawyers, from old to young, from those that grew up right here to those that have chosen here from spots around the globe. Georgetown is a true community where its flavor and uniqueness are drawn from the people who call it home. Established from our location It has long been said that Georgetown is 16 miles from everything, and that proximity makes us a great place to live. But we aren't just a quaint place to pass through, but an amazing place to live. Georgetown affords a well-rounded life. From the farmer's market to the concerts in the park, from wings and wheels to the rich traditions of Return Day, Georgetown is alive and well today. New energy in Georgetown. We are crafting a new vision for our future. We are growing new businesses and attracting new customers. We are a community of many faces, many names, and many backgrounds who are coming together to make Georgetown better. We invite you to explore this place we call home, experience the warmth of our friends and neighbors, taste our multitudes of flavors, and get lost around the heart of our community, the Circle. And you'll see what we mean when we say Georgetown, Delaware, well-rounded. So when you pull all that together, you start to see this very simple approach that starts to tie together your opportunity to show how all the different things that you have to offer tie into this concept of offering a well-rounded life. So we start there, but I think one of the things I always like to jump into is the diversity of a system. So here we have this typeface. We see, I've actually created a couple different variations of artistic representations of the courthouse tower. But what we see here is, on the left-hand side, we see a horizontal version. In the center, we have more of a square orientation, and then we have a vertical orientation. Branding is not about having one logo. It is about having the right message for the right time. We also see that with these, they work in one color, they work in reverse in black and white. And because of the nature of this typeface, we have the opportunity to take something that might automatically read as traditional, and with the way that we do it, whether we take this big lowercase g, bleed things off of colored backgrounds and things like that, we can take something that is traditional and make it read as contemporary as well. I talked before about the importance of good art. This is the current seal. So all the information that exists here is common sense. Town of Georgetown, Delaware, established 1791, and then a picture of the courthouse. Now, there was a version before this that was a one-color version. It had slightly different art, so over time, it had been modified. Some additional colors had been added, and the gold ring had been added to it. So it had been adapted. But I just want to show you, this is the two side by side. The difference between the drawing here and the scale drawing of the courthouse itself. Some of the greatest elements of the proportion of that courthouse were lost by cramming it into that circle and kind of shrinking it down. So what I did was I started with that seal. The seal is an extremely important graphic tool. It does not need to go away. But I wanted to show how you could update that and bring it in. So now what we've done is we've taken the new art, we've created a new seal that features the courthouse, features Town of Georgetown, Delaware, Sussex County seat, established 1791, and a banner across. And what we actually see here is this banner wraps, and on the same arch of the banner is a circular green underneath that courthouse, paying homage to the circle. But this also works in black and white, it works in one color, and we show how we can take that graphic of the seal and tie it with that uniform word type of the community. So we have that destination logo that's a little slicker, and then we have this seal which represents the town itself. And then showing how you could take that, roll it over into the business cards. You know, you now have kind of a professional standpoint that you can kind of jump from. So being able to have those professional correspondence there that you can share with everyone. Now, where it gets fun is when we get to what we call brand extension. So what we've seen so far is we've seen this town organizational identity and the destination variation. but how does it make its way into the entities in the community? Now, one of the first things that I heard that there's a multitude of arts organizations in Georgetown, but the multitude of arts organizations have not been able to create an art-driven momentum. Is that fair to say? They're doing a lot of different things, and there's some great things happening. But I think it's time here in Georgetown to be able to create an organization that can pull all of that positivity together into true arts-driven momentum. And so I know a lot of the communities around you have successful arts leagues. In other parts of the country, they have arts councils or foundations or whatever. Simply showing how bringing the arts together and having an identity that kind of amplifies that is something that could be good. And here I just created a star out of 5 conjoined A's symbolizing the arts. Taking that same foundation, applying it to some of the events that go on, concerts in the park, farmers market. So again, over and over again, I heard citizens talk about how much they loved the farmers market. We need to convert the positive experiences of the farmers market into positive brand equity for the community. You would think that the resident would do that on their own. But sadly, it is so much easier for them to allow everything to maintain compartmentalized. Great example of this was I was working in downtown Little Rock, Arkansas. And you would go around, and excuse my language, but you would ask people what they thought of downtown, and they'd say, downtown sucks. And then I would say, well, what do you think about the River Market? New district that had this fantastic growth, millions of dollars in investment. They'd say, oh, the River Market's awesome. We go down there all the time. It's fantastic, great restaurants. We love the River Market. Well, where's the River Market?
Downtown.
Downtown. But guess what? They had allowed the River Market to maintain such a sense of self-identity that the positive equity in the River Market did not convert at all into positive equity for downtown. The community did not even realize it was downtown. It had become its own place. So making sure that you can take those events and contribute that positive equity back into the community. Now, one of the new things that you all have started to pull together is a merchants association, or at the very least, meeting with business owners. I'm recommending that you all take a slightly different approach with that organization. I'm recommending you call it the Georgetown Merchants Guild. Really focus this in on being an organization that is focused on, I'm going to use the phrase self-benefit. The thing that I said this week is we have to remember, especially with the downtown retail owner, they are running an event every day. Their job is to run an event. We want to make sure that they are positioned to be as profitable as possible and have the best business possible here in Georgetown. Because the thing I know to be the case is every time a business closes here in Georgetown, guess who gets blamed? Not the business owner, the town. Oh, you can't do business in Georgetown. Don't you remember? That coffee shop opened and they were only open 3 months. Town can't support it. Well, that might not necessarily be the case. So being able to create a network of businesses that are truly focused on making their business better and understanding the dynamics that their business has with other businesses in the community. My hope is that a byproduct of this organization can be a greater collaboration between the business base and what is best described as the Hispanic business base, which right now the operators of those businesses are operating in their own worlds. So we need to enhance communication between the two because there is product overlap, there's service overlap, and there should be potential for customer overlap. Had an opportunity to go in and eat lunch yesterday at Jalapeno on East Market. Had a great conversation with the owner. He spoke better English than I do from being from South Carolina. So I think he had a hard time understanding me because he said I had an accent. But you know, the thing that was so sad to me was he said, it is very difficult for me to get white customers because they don't think that I serve food they'd like. That was a difficult message to hear. And being able to know that the service was great, the price was, I thought, extremely fair for the portion size that I got, and I'm a big guy and I love stuff. So we need to really foster additional communication between the business base. Taking advantage and being able to leverage some of these assets from all over. We had our public meeting last night over at the museum, fantastic space. I think one of the things that we heard from the folks that were there, and it was interesting because the crowd kind of started small and then people kept trickling in throughout the meeting, but they kept saying, this is a great venue and it's not really used to its potential. People probably don't know about it as much as they should, but shouldn't this be a more active place in the community? So being able to tell that story and tie it into the overall sense of the community. Again, simply being able to show the simple power through typeface and colors of being able to roll event identities into this system. That script typeface is so distinct that simply using that automatically ties things into the system. So now all of a sudden, what we start to see is we start to see a system emerge where people are starting to connect the dots because the dots are being made a lot larger. And that is very, very important for our consumers. Now, where it also gets fun is when we start to look at collateral materials, showing what you might be able to do with like a shopping and dining guide. Being able to bring in a sense of sophistication. And I have to be honest, you're at a unique point in your growth process. Heard a lot of people that said, hey, you know, we can invite people here all we want. What are they going to do when they get here? I want to be very, very mindful to say that you do have some things that are good experiences. And they need to be catalyst experiences to help motivate other pioneers to come out and craft additional experiences. One of the biggest things that works against communities that are in a point like yours is the hesitation and the lack of willingness to promote any individual business because it looks like you're playing favorites. I understand why that's touchy, but the fact is there are certain businesses here that are making different impacts on the way that people perceive Georgetown than others. I can guarantee you that 16 Mile impacts the way people think about Georgetown, Delaware, far more than the Royal Farms does. I love Royal Farms. I love their chewy ice. I'm not complaining about Royal Farms. But my point is that you have to understand that there are different businesses that are cultivating experiences. Sports at the Beach is a magnet, bringing in people from all over the eastern seaboard, and that magnet means that they are creating economic potential. So it's absolutely okay to use the businesses that are cultivating the kind of experience we want to grow and use them as a catalyst for that growth. Signage. Signage is an extremely important thing to focus in on. The chamber, obviously, I'm going to make fun of the chamber for a second. I think this is all right.
Go ahead.
So, you know, as I traveled through the community, the chamber, over its long and storied history, has always understood the importance of signage because they put signage throughout the community in different places, probably over the last 100 years. Some of those signs that they put 100 years ago are still out there. And they might not have necessarily been taken care of since then. I noticed the sign on the back of the gazebo over at Marvel Museum. You know the one I'm talking about? It's starting to look a little bit old. But you know, the thing is, the other thing that was mentioned to us was the billboard that mentions the chamber. I can't even guess how old that is. It's probably
In
I'm trying to investigate that.
Yeah.
In our defense, we've been waiting for this day.
No doubt, no doubt.
Literally,
No doubt.
waiting for this day.
I'm not being overly harsh, because my point is that there are canvases throughout the community that are ready to share this message. What I'm showing here in the wayfinding system is a wayfinding system that would be more likely to be deployed from the public sector. And wayfinding is kind of a fancy word, but I mean, typically what you see in communities is you see a community will put in this fantastic gateway sign. And then after the gateway, there isn't any other communication. So after the gateway, what gets picked up is DelDOT's communication. And DelDOT's communication tells you how to leave places, not how to experience the places that you are.
That's their business.
That is their business. So, you know, again, not being critical of the DelDOT infrastructure, that is that purpose. So this bridges the gap between the welcome and the exit. So we have a couple different signs here. The two on the right-hand side are called Trailblazer signs. Trailblazer signs typically have 3 destinations on them, no more than 3, or they become visually ineffective. These signs are designed by what's called the MUTCD standard, the Manual for Uniform Traffic Control Devices. It was published in 2009 by the United States Department of Transportation. It is the most amazing read that you will ever have. I downloaded the PDF on my iPad, and my iPad weighed 7 pounds. By 2011, every state was required to adopt a certain set of standards, either adopt the national standards or adopt a series of revised standards for their own state. DelDOT has adopted a uniform policy on wayfinding signage. So I know that what I'm showing here is something that DelDOT has already said they can work with that, using standard reflective colors, using the appropriate proportion on letter height and that kind of thing. Next to that, we're showing banners and maps. Whenever you want someone to get out of the car and walk around, maps are huge tools at being able to orient them to the place. That point where they transition from being vehicular traffic into a pedestrian is the place that you tell them everything that they can see. This is a map kiosk. These signs would probably appear at places like public parking lots as they're filtering out onto the sidewalk. Think about it almost like a mall. When you walk into a mall from one of the main entrances, there's always a directory right at the main first decision point. We want to do the same thing here. One of the biggest signs, although it's the smallest on the screen, is the parking signs. You have a community that is plagued by a typical county seat, courthouse town parking infrastructure strain. It's, you know, is it hard? Yes. Does it make things difficult? Absolutely. Does it mean that certain times you can't find a spot and other times there's 60 acres of asphalt heating up your community? Yes, that's part of the dynamic here. But does it mean that you have a parking capacity problem? Parking awareness is big. When somebody is coming in to jury duty, they've already got a letter that forcing them to be somewhere. We might be able to tell them where they park. You know, their day is pretty much shot as it is, so they have to walk an extra block. It's no skin off our nose. So being able to truly craft those communication strategies is something that's going to be really important for us. Now, in addition to that, I showed a banner here, but I'm a big fan of street banners as strategic tools. And a lot of times what happens with street banners is we over-design them. And what I mean by that is we design them off of a white background. I'm guilty of it. I'm a designer. I sit there and I'll open up a screen and it starts with a blank page. Well, guess what? Banners aren't going up in a blank page. They're going up in our community. So we have to think about the context of where those banners are going to go and what function we want them to perform. One of the things that's interesting about the circle is when you get in onto the circle, by nature, circles can be slightly disorienting. So you get in and you immediately go right, and then you're like, okay, so if I wanted to go straight, which turn is it that I'm supposed to take? You can use banners, you can use solid color backgrounds to help people better understand the flow of the circle. And you could have East Market all be lined with one color, and West Market could all be lined with another. And then all of a sudden you start to have a better visual understanding. Now the other thing that that does is once you get out on the street and you walk, you can start to use those colors as orienting points. Because the thing is, your community is based off of a grid. The businesses that you have to offer are not centralized on one single street. So you will need your customers for the foreseeable future to be willing to navigate the grid to get the best experience. I'm showing a couple different things here. This next slide, I'll show these a little more. This is taking one of the big stylized lowercase g's and using it as a window to be able to just simply show texture of the community. We've got a large one with the courthouse, one that brings more of the solid color impact, and then a 4-color version that's more of an event-oriented version. As you get to the point where you have a robust banner system, using banners to promote individual events is an absolute opportunity for you all. Many times these banners are produced in a different way, where these might be produced on Sombrella canvas, and they're actually screen printed onto canvas. This might be printed 4-color on vinyl. Much lower cost, but they also have a lower lifetime. But if they are promoting an event, they're a perfect match. Now, in addition to that, this next one just kind of shows, as you go through and you pull different photos, you can kind of align the photos with the color. And this is the weather vane, this is Chancery Court, and that's the fountain. Do I expect you to know them? No. But as you're walking around on foot, it becomes an interesting interaction to try to figure out what you're seeing through that window as it matches up with the environment around you. And then finally, we roll over into advertising, being able to tell the story. Everything you're going to see in the next couple of slides are photos that were taken in the last 2 days. And being able to kind of craft this message, take this concept of well-rounded and starting to tell the community's story. This one is highlighting Return Day. What I did with the composition of this is actually the train depot, but I took it and I blurred it out, saturated it up, created a texture in the background, allowing this particular composition to be one that is a little more contemporary in nature, where this is a little more traditional in nature. This is a shot from inside the produce section of El Mercado. Always fresh, always well-rounded. Highlighting some of the different churches in the community, some of the different sites. And you know, every spot of your downtown is not perfectly manicured. And that's why cameras have zooms on them. You know, the architectural details of this community are a huge asset. And being able to highlight that detail work is one of the best ways that we can reintroduce the community itself to that architectural detail. We have to remind the community that it is a beautiful town. You live in it every day, so you don't see it the same way that I see it. And being able to share that kind of fresh perspective is very, very important with your citizens. In that concept of well-rounded and being able to bring it into the layout itself using circular photo frames to be able to highlight images. Again, just working through to be able to show these different attributes, the historic firehouse that's been restored. Again, one of your typical images of the circle. I had a great conversation with Chad over at 16 Mile, and essentially he said, look, the way I see it, you can tell from the way we chose to name the business, we are invested in Georgetown. Every sense of our community, our identity is So they pretty much said, you know, you just let us know what we need to do to help, because as Georgetown's brand improves, then it just helps them. So they're going to be big supporters, I believe. And highlighting those, such a great fountain. The old courthouse. This whole concept, I think one of the big things that I really want to convey to you all is, over and over again, I heard people talk about history. We're a historic community. We're a historic community. Well, yes, you've got a great history, but there were a couple people that made the very, very astute point. It's like, history does not mean anything if you don't capture it and figure out how to share it. If people can't experience that history, can't see it, can't learn about it, can't grow from it, then your history is no different than anyone else's. So giving them the opportunity to experience it is huge. But then the other side of that, to me, is even more powerful. The concept that this has been a place where time and time again history has been made. And if you are interested in making history, maybe you should. That kind of baseline of saying that great things can happen here, and they have historically, that's an angle we want to make sure to market. Being able, again, highlight some of these details here. First of all, I mean, this is probably one of the most ornate and handsome weather vanes I think I've ever seen. It's absolutely fantastic. But then even showing how, because of the strength of this typeface, you can drop this thing at the bottom after it starts to get out and people start to have seen it. And it reads extremely sophisticated. But it also, it's not exclusive. It's not exclusionary. And I think that was one of the things that I really liked about it. Again, being able to show off some of that imagery, show off some of the different attributes. This was, I have no clue how I got spit backwards. Yeah. When I was over at Marble Museum, it was kind of interesting because the first job that I ever had was restoring these gas pumps. So, you know, somebody like me, anytime I see this stuff, I absolutely love it. And then I'm like, holy moly, they have a telephone museum? And then I think I realized that I was like, man, I'm a bigger nerd than I thought I was. But it's like, I've got to come back and go to the telephone museum. And again, just showing off that sense of place, showing off the assets that the community has, and being able to create a solid baseline that you can then jump off of. And I've got to be blunt, you are at a sensitive time because of the demographics of your community and the shift that is taking place. And it's going to require relatively quick action on your part. And that quick action comes in a very logical sequence. Sequence number one is to throw out a baseline of messaging that helps to reinvigorate local pride. You need that local pride to then move into a transitional phase where you are ready to wrap your arms around the diverse business community that you have and figure out how to convert that diverse business community into a singular marketable business community. And then from there, once you stabilize and kind of convert present assets, then you can start to focus on that asset development and the asset growth. But you've got to stable your ship first. Does that make sense? I don't think it's going to be a hard message, believe it or not. People are hungry to love where they live. It's human nature. It doesn't take much of this messaging to really capture and kind of ignite that fire. But you do need to get that word out. Again, I always like to kind of show people that this Masonic Lodge, the Academy and Masonic Lodge, was such an interesting building to me. Its relationship to how it sits next to the tracks and just kind of the whole space, the public space. Again, I'm a nerd like that, but being able to get in there, and if you do not get out of your car and walk up to it, all you ever see is magnolia tree. So being able to show something that you might drive past every day from a slightly different angle is a really good way to help people reconnect with the community. Showing off some of the homes in the community that are, there you go, good job, it's beautiful. I didn't even know that, but you know, and to be honest with you, one of the things that I do is I simply drive around the community. And when a particular house jumps out as being very well cared for, I always try to take a picture of it, because it doesn't matter how big it is, it doesn't matter what neighborhood it's on, what street it's on. That means that there's a citizen with extreme pride. And if they have pride in their property, they want their neighbors to have pride in their property as well. So being able to take those people as catalysts to help that growth. Being able to highlight things like fire, police, those folks that are out there really giving to the community, public works, you know, celebrating our heroes. And then just capturing, everybody loves a good flower picture, right? But then also simply being able to joke with yourself a little bit, you know, where our new courthouse is only 179 years old. You know, you all have got a truly, truly fantastic community. And it is easy to kind of overlook it because you live here and you deal with every single issue that might come up. I always try to tell folks, when you live in a community like Georgetown, it's kind of like owning a classic car. And a classic car takes constant work and constant money. You are constantly investing time and effort in it. And that's why people with classic cars take them out to cruise-ins, because they need other people to tell them how beautiful their car is, to motivate them for that continued investment. Your community is the same way. You have a real American classic. 20 years, the outlets at Tanger are going to be old retail strips. And you are going to continue to be a county square community with a unique circle, fantastic architecture that you simply can no longer reproduce. So with that, I'm really excited for you. We're kind of coming around on the hour, so I want to turn it back over to you for your thoughts, your initial impressions, and see if you feel like that overall strategy seems to make sense and seems to fit into what Georgetown might need. You get to start.